Welcome to another episode of Mumble Jungle. This is the second part to our Tales from the Internet feature, where Megan and I read spooky stories we found on Reddit. I hope you enjoy the episode.
This one is from the thread, Serious. It says it twice, so you gotta be super serious about this one. What is the unexplained/creepy/scary story that always gets told in your family gatherings? And this is from Too Many Kegs. Cool name. My grandmother is getting pretty old now, so she tells this story more often than she used to. In the 60s, she took her 3 young kids and left her abusive husband. The only house she could afford to rent at first was a ramshackle 4-room farmhouse in the middle of nowhere. Very Courage the Cowardly Dog. It didn't even have indoor plumbing, just an outhouse and a well out back where they drew water. According to her and my mother, every night around 2 a.m. they would hear the back door into the kitchen unlock and open. It was an old door, and both those actions had a very distinctive, unmistakable sound. They would then hear heavy footsteps walk across the creaky kitchen floor to the water bucket, and the water dipper would rattle against the bucket like someone was dipping out a drink of water. And then nothing. It scared the out of her, of course, but once she ascertained that no one was breaking and entering, so there was no one to shoot, she settled down. In her eyes, whatever was happening, it wasn't harmful. My mom, on the other hand, was the only kid old enough to really understand what was happening, and it freaked her out. So my grandmother decided to get her sister, my great-aunt Sue, to stay over one night. They planned to sit up and see what the hell was going on. My mom wasn't going to join them, but she couldn't sleep and felt safer in the room with them. So she was there as well when 2 o'clock rolled around. They were sitting at the kitchen table drinking coffee when they heard the back door unlock and swing open. The thing is, they were staring straight at it and it didn't move. Same with the footsteps and the water dipper. They saw nothing, even though they could hear it clearly, even discern the direction of the noises. That was pretty much that. It kept happening every night. They didn't stay in that house long because my grandmother found a job and a better rental closer to town, and my mom was super happy to get out of there. So my grandmother still talks about it sometimes, and it's strangely hilarious because she's so unbothered by it. But the last time I asked her why it didn't scare her, she said, well, he was just thirsty.
Yeah, the grandma being like, well, there's nothing to shoot, so what am I supposed to do? That's funny.
Yeah.
Like, if you think about that happening, that would be scary if I was sitting there and that was happening.
Yeah.
But that was a funny story because of the grandma.
My thing would be, if I did see a ghost, I wouldn't assume it's bad. I would just be like, hey there, buddy. Now, if it tries to attack me, then things are going to be different. But, I don't know, it could be like a Casper or a guy like that who's just trying to drink some water.
Yes, but if you think about ghosts in the usual way of like, they're here, they're still on this earth because they have something that they needed to complete before they died.
Mm-hmm. But I think you're wrong because that's such a Western horror way of thinking about it. If you look at other cultures, they don't all view ghosts that same way.
Well, how do they view ghosts?
Think of the Chinese. They have ghost ancestors who are always looking over them.
That's true, and Hispanic cultures.
Yeah. Exactly. And if you watch movies, even Western movies like Paranorman, where he could see ghosts and they're all just chilling. They're just living, well, not living their life. That's kind of an ironic thing to say. Who's to say that, all ghosts are bad?
That's true. And the show Ghosts.
No, I don't know that show.
You wouldn't like it. It's a sitcom.
I mean, if that's the case, then our little water drinker here is just thirsty.
Aw. They should turn on the TV for him.
I don't think they probably didn't have a TV if they're in a 4-bedroom ramshackle, no bathroom, Courage the Cowardly Dog house.
I'm just saying in the show Ghosts, she turns on the TV for the ghosts and they really like it.
Yeah.
Because they want to know what's currently happening. They like reality TV.
If I had a ghost friend, I would see if I can pair up with that ghost friend to like solve and stop crime.
Well, that they did that on Ghosts. They solved the ghost murder. Like one of the ghosts was murdered and they solved her murder.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean more like let's pretend like this is a thing where only I can see the ghost, but the ghost can interact with the world.
Yeah, that's what ghosts
like a haunting thing.
Yeah.
I would go out into the world And you've never seen JoJo's, but in JoJo's they have stands, which are sort of like, you can almost think of it like a ghost or a specter that only they can see and other stand users can see, that then they fight one another, the stands do. I would use it like a stand where I would have the ghost start pummeling the guy and I pretend like I'm doing it from standing way over there so that they get really freaked out by me. But really, I'm not doing anything. So I'd be like the face, I'd be like the fear factor, where anytime I come in, the bad guys are like, oh, it's that guy. He can pummel us without even touching us. And then I'd have the ghost beat him up.
Well, what if the ghost that you find is like really tiny and they can't beat anyone up?
Well,
They got no muscles.
I don't know. Then maybe I'll have them. Maybe I'll have them like lift up a gun and like fire it into the air or something.
Right.
Or if that's the case, I can have the ghost like pickpocket them all while I'm like talking, and then they go to draw their gun and they don't have one.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good idea.
And then I'll have all the guns in my hand, and they'll be like, "Whoa, how'd you do that?" And I'll be like, "I can stop time. How are you going to stop me?"
Right. Okay, this next story that I have, I kind of skimmed it, so I actually haven't read the full story.
Okay.
I was just like, oh, okay, I can kind of see what this is about, so I just added it. So we're all getting this experience together.
Okay.
One night when I was 13 years old, I had gotten my period for the first time and ended up sleeping on my back. I am an avid side sleeper, so this is a really weird position for me. I was dreaming, and in that dream, I was sitting in a chair. I leaned it back on its back legs, and suddenly the chair started to slowly lean further and further back until I drifted into the eternity below me. This freaked me out, and I jolted awake. When I awoke, there was a figure leaning/hovering directly above my face, and all I saw was a hooded, white, flat, ovular, and relatively featureless face with big, ovular, glassy eyes and an expression like it was determined to devour my eternal soul. The face was humanoid, very two-dimensional, with thin, quivering, angry lips and two holes where its nose would be, with eyebrows arched high onto its forehead. I could feel an unworldly hate burning right through me as it loomed over me. It was absolutely the most helpless I have ever felt and would ever feel, because it was more than just my life I felt was at stake. I tried to move, scream, breathe, anything, and couldn't. It was paralyzing me with its hate. I finally was able to let out the thinnest whimper, and as soon as the sound escaped me, it stood straight up and paced back and forth at the foot of my bed, still staring. It was like a force field was erected around me, and the frustration of trying to get at me again was radiating through the room. It looked like a starving tiger behind glass, longing to lunge at its vulnerable prey, if only it weren't for the barrier between us. It was tall, almost all the way to the ceiling tall, and very thin, wearing a long black cloak that covered everything except that terrifying face. I realized that it hadn't been floating over me. It had stood at the foot of my bed and leaned over it to hover its face over mine. I sat up on my bed, still frozen, just staring at it. My closet door behind was cracked a few inches, and it swooped in there and peered out at me, never having broke eye contact. It continued to stare, quivering with hate and frustration until it slowly faded away. I turned my light on, and it stayed on at night for a long time. I never slept with that closet door open again, and I didn't sleep again that night. I stayed the night in the living room with all of the lights on, just sitting on the couch. I later dismissed it as sleep paralysis for several years. It was a very believable and plausible explanation. Then I became friends with a girl who confided in me and told me a story. She was up late at night by herself with her door open. Something out of the living room by the kitchen caught her eye, and when she looked at it, she saw a figure standing there, beckoning her to approach it. She looked away, refocused on it, and it was still there. When she described it, she described the exact same creature that had attacked me. We each got a sketchbook and drew what we saw, and when she showed me hers, I was staring at my attacker all over again. She had never heard my story before telling hers. That's creepy.
The period monster.
That's creepy. Don't say that. Don't say a period monster. No, because when I was first reading it, I was thinking that it was sleep paralysis, because I had heard other people tell their stories of sleep paralysis. Like my dad, he had sleep paralysis really bad for a long time, and he would describe it as like that. But then your friend also seeing the same thing whenever they were younger, before you guys even knew each other, that's freaky.
There was no mention of the year. I'm curious, not to say that this is the explanation, but I wonder if there was some sort of, because if they lived in the same place, if there was some sort of imagery or something around the town or around where they lived or in the culture at the time that might have prompted them to both have similar.
Well, it sounded a little bit like Slenderman.
Yeah.
To me. But the black cloak is different.
Right. This one is from What Creepy Experience or Story Haunts You to This Day? Serious.
Serious. Be serious about it.
From Initial Philosophy 43. I was young, maybe 10 or 11, and home alone after school. I was working on my homework upstairs when someone rang the doorbell. Sometimes my friend down the street would come over, so I ran downstairs thinking it was her. There was a window above our door, and it was very high up, so usually I could stand at the top of the stairs and look through it to see who was at the door at the top of their head. This time there was a man just looking through that window. It must have been 7 feet off the ground, and he was eye-lined with it. He had a very round face, I remember, and a huge smile. It was something out of a horror movie. Then my cat, who I regularly call Slutty because he is so friendly, starts growling at him. He sees me at the top of the stair landing and just says, "Hi, I'm here to check for pests. Can you let me in?" I duck down and he says, "I saw you. I know your parents aren't home, but I need to come in." I still hear his voice clearly. I was terrified and ran down the stairs and into the kitchen to grab a phone. He keeps asking me to open the door. Finally, I tell him something like, "No, you'll have to come back another time." He won't take no for an answer, just keeps repeating himself. Then I tell him I'm going to call the police. All politeness out the window. He says something about me being rude and that I'm stopping him from doing his job. I keep repeating that I will call the police, and he finally starts just screaming and cursing at me, and finally he slams his hand as hard as he can into the door. I start dialing, and he runs off. I didn't finish calling the police, and sat near our front door until my parents came home.
I would have called the police still, I think.
Oh, yeah.
That's terrifying.
Yeah. I think that the only thing supernatural about it is the fact that he was 7 feet tall, but otherwise that's a very creepy.
He could have been 7 feet tall. Whenever I would hear a knock on the door, whenever my parents were at home, I have 3 siblings, right? Whenever we would hear a knock on the door, everyone turn the lights off, run into one room, shut the door until they leave.
Where I was living, people wouldn't show up. However, the guy that did break into our house, he did knock on the door. We know this because of fingerprints. He did check the front door, and whenever nobody answered, he went around to the back and kicked it open.
That's scary.
Yeah, but it's really not that scary because he was such an imbecile that he left his entire handprint on the glass from peering in like this, and that's how he got caught immediately that same day.
There's been a lot of serial killers that have said that people that leave their door unlocked, they would be more of a target because they saw that as an invitation to go in.
You want to tell us your story?
Okay, this one was very terrifying to me specifically, and you'll see why because of the demographic that it pertains to.
Mm-hmm.
There are some wonderful things about being young, poor, and in love. Sadly, this is about none of those things. When I was 22, I decided to move in with my equally poor boyfriend. Unfortunately, poor plus poor still equals mostly poor, but not so destitute that we couldn't afford an apartment in a college town. We happily moved into our little one-bedroom, first-floor apartment. Sure, it had problems. The lead-based paint was so thick we were sure we could survive a nuclear attack. The bathroom didn't have a vent. Instead, it had a window in the shower. The appliances were from the time of my grandmother, but it was home. Our home. We loved it. My boyfriend worked the graveyard shift, and I worked days, so we spent a lot of time apart. That meant when we were together, we enjoyed the simple things in life. Over time, when I was waking up and taking my morning shower, my boyfriend, who was just getting home, realized that he could come up to our open shower window and sneak a peek. I always caught him. It was in good fun, and we laughed. Eventually, I started to notice there was a log standing upright outside that window. I continually asked him why he would need that. He was tall enough already. He claimed it wasn't his and moved it away. Yet every few days, it would move right back. The guys who cared for the yard were there several times a week, so they must have just been moving it back out of the way against the building. Finally, before the snow fell, the yard workers cleared away all the yard debris, and we went on in peaceful oblivion, candy-coated, love-filled oblivion. Time went on and our lease was up, but there was a great special at our cheap apartment complex. We could now rent 2 bedrooms, even cheaper than our 1 bedroom. We happily signed the new lease. The only real problem was that our 1-bedroom apartment was on a nice suburban street facing houses, so we never really noticed how bad our neighborhood was. We were moved on the other end of the community, behind an abandoned strip mall. Our front yard consisted of a dark alley and some dumpsters behind a recently vacated Chinese buffet where a lot of stray cats seemed to live. None of this mattered in our dimly lit front yard, though. Our apartment was super cheap and super huge. What more could we ask for? That year, we were so happy that my boyfriend went to buy me a ring on Valentine's Day. Being young and giddy in love, he wasn't able to keep the secret, and I told him yes before he could even ask the question. He didn't have a lot of money, so he bought a ring with the help of his friend's father, who owned a jewelry store. He got a good price, but with the drop in price, so comes a drop in attention to detail. I was devastated when he brought home the ring, along with our wedding band set, to find that someone had mistaken my very tiny 4-ring size with a 12. Clearly, they needed to go back, so we put them in his glove box, but then a snowstorm prevented him from taking them back that day. The next day, he went to his car to find that it had been broken into. Nothing had been taken except the rings from the glove box. We never did have the money to replace them. We personally went to every pawn shop in the area, and everybody said they hadn't seen anything. I began to be jealous anytime I'd see a woman with large fingers wearing a silver ring with a Celtic knotwork. Winter passed and summer came. With the summer came the warm breeze and the fresh air through our open windows. What the summer didn't bring was more money, not for us and not for the city. We lost our phone service for non-payment, but it didn't matter. The only people we talked to were each other anyway. Meanwhile, the city cut police and even closed a few stations, most of them in our neighborhood. It didn't matter, though. Summer days are long, and our dingy little corner of the community wasn't at all imitating in the daylight. One night, my husband-to-be turned in for the night early, and so I decided after a long day what I really needed was a nice soak in the bath. I walked into the bathroom and began to run the water, adding my bath salts and bubble bath. I opened the window for that nice summer breeze and took off my clothes and dumped them in a pile by the open bathroom door. I then grabbed my laptop to set on the closed toilet seat so I could relax in the tub with a movie. This would be at least 2 hours of pure bliss. I turned the volume up on my laptop and relaxed the hours away with one movie and then another. What must have been 4 hours later, first of all, 4 hours in the bathtub. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
That's
the real horror.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. I pulled the plug on the drain and sat while the water swirled away. I slowly stood up and stretched and dried off, the now cool night air hitting my face through the window. I figured I'd just leave that open, though. The apartment could use the airing out. I stepped out of the tub and across the bathroom. I didn't bother to move my pile of clothes, instead stepping around them in a manner to get out of the partially open bathroom door. This move put me looking back into the bathroom, right out the window where I saw a tall man. At first I was startled, but quickly realized it was just my fiancé playing a trick on me like he used to at our old apartment. Then I saw his eyes, up too high in the window, and everything in my head began to swim. I couldn't scream, I couldn't move, I could only stand there naked and stare. Then everything came to a startling detail. He was standing up so high that I could see his torso in the window. The motion drew my attention to his hand. Everything happened in a split second after I saw him. While I was frozen to the spot, I noticed he was wearing a silver ring with Celtic knotwork on it. I made a mental note of ways to identify him as I unfroze and ran to the bedroom. "There's a man outside the window," I said, so fast my fiancé couldn't understand as he woke up. "What?" he asked. I repeated, "There's a man outside the bathroom window. He was watching me." "Oh my God, make him go away." I was finally in hysterics as everything sunk in. That man could have been there, hovering over me for hours. The only thing separating us was a thin screen. By the time my fiancé woke up and went to check the situation, nobody was anywhere around. There was only a log standing upright like a step outside the bathroom window. In the aftermath, we filed a police report but had no phones to call, so we had to drive a few 20 minutes away to do so. Then they didn't have enough forces to do anything about the situation anyway. We didn't have the money to break our lease. Instead, we spent the rest of our year living in fear. I covered every window with black contact paper. I wedged boards into every window so they couldn't be opened. The bathroom window never again opened. I never left without pepper spray. I never left after dark, but for the rest of that year, most nights, I'd hear a faint noise outside our bedroom window, which was next to our bathroom. In the morning, when I saw my fiance would check it out, there would be imprints on the ground, as if someone had recently been standing there. I wish I could say this is just a story. I wish I could say that. But it is all the truth of 3 long years of my life. I still can't sleep at night. That one terrified me.
Yeah, that one's horrible.
Yeah.
I'm going to do my last story here. This is from Reddit. What is the scariest story you know that is 100% true? Years ago, when I was 8, my family lived in this big weird house kind of on the edge of a small town. The school district was in the middle of a big restructuring, so even though we were only a couple grades apart, my brother and I went to different schools and took different buses. This left me as the last person to leave in the morning and the first person to get home in the afternoon, which meant it was my job to make sure all the lights were off and the door was locked. One morning, I noticed the basement door was open and the light was on, so before I left, I turned off the light and closed the door. When I got home that afternoon, the light was on and the door was open again. I just assumed that I'd forgotten to actually take care of it when I noticed it in the morning. So I went over to turn the light off and close the door. When I got to the top of the basement stairs, I looked and there was a big shadowy male figure toward the bottom of the staircase. I freaked out, slammed the door, and pushed a bunch of boxes against it and then went and hid in my closet. For months I didn't tell my family because I was positive that what I had seen was a ghost and didn't think anyone would believe me. Then about a year after that incident, my mom and her boyfriend realized that small amounts of money had been going missing for months, totaling around $800 to $900, but never more than $60 at once.
I think I know where this is going.
So we all walked around the house with flashlights trying to figure out how they could have gotten in. Turns out some creep was climbing in through a small hole in the outside of the house, shimmying through the crawl space, then coming up into the house through the basement. Realizing I had been alone in the house with him on at least one occasion was one of the worst, most terrifying moments I've ever had.
Yeah, whenever you said the money was going missing, I was like, oh, I know where this is going.
Yeah. I think that was, so I had read probably 4 or 5 home invading stories, and that was the least terrifying one to me, so that's the one I picked. All right, everybody. Well, that was our scary stories. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, follow, or like the episode, and stick around for more. We also have board game content on our YouTube channel, which we upload every Wednesday, and new podcast episodes every Friday. So, yeah. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Bye.
See ya.